Right now, you might feel a strange, persistent tightness in your chest, the sensation of outgrowing a life that once fit you perfectly. It is a quiet, uncomfortable friction, like wearing a coat that has become too small after a long season of growth. Perhaps you are lying there, noticing how your shoulders remain lifted, braced against a world that is not currently asking anything of you. The air in this room is cool, brushing against your skin with a neutrality that doesn't care about your achievements or your anxieties. There is no urgency in the shadows pooling in the corners, nor in the way the silence settles into the floorboards. You are simply here, in a space that asks for nothing but your presence. You may have come here because you feel like a snake, caught in an old, hardened layer of skin, feeling the edges of your own identity becoming restrictive, dry, and brittle. Every movement feels labored, as if you are dragging the heavy, transparent ghost of who you used to be, afraid that if you finally let that layer peel away, there will be nothing underneath to hold you. It is exhaustion born from maintenance, from the constant, silent effort of keeping a version of yourself alive that has already fulfilled its purpose. Maybe you feel this in the way you interact with your own thoughts, treating them like a rigid, protective shell that you are terrified to lose. You are not broken, and the friction you feel is not a failure of character. It is simply the ache of expansion. What you are feeling is the natural, inevitable tension of a life trying to move forward while a part of you remains anchored in the past. Tonight, we will not force your mind to become silent. We will not try to strip away the old skin with urgency or force. Instead, we will look at how this tightness is actually a sign of your own vitality, a reminder that you are still growing, still becoming. We will learn to trust the process of shedding, recognizing that the vulnerability you fear is actually the only way to arrive at a softer, more spacious way of existing. You do not need to solve your whole life tonight. You do not need to figure out who you will be tomorrow. The only task here is to allow your nervous system to observe the sensation of the tight skin, to let it breathe, and to see if, perhaps, it can be loosened just enough to let you rest. There is a powerful paradox in this. We often suffer not because we are changing, but because we are fighting the change. We believe that if we hold on to our familiar, rigid boundaries, our habitual ways of reacting, our old defenses, our self-imposed expectations, we are safe. But that very grip is what creates the pain. The Buddhist path suggests that peace does not come from securing a permanent, unchanging version of the self, but from realizing that the self is more like a river than a stone. It is always in motion, always renewing itself. Your anxiety is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is the mind trying to preserve a structure that has already served its time. Consider the possibility that the exhaustion you feel is the result of holding your breath, waiting for a safety that was never found in the stiffness. What if the peace you have been searching for is not something to be earned by perfecting your identity, but the spaciousness that emerges when you finally decide it is safe to outgrow yourself? We are going to explore this journey slowly, gently, moving through the layers of what you have been carrying. There is no need for you to rush. There is no deadline for this shedding. You are safe enough to soften, right here, right now, as the night moves slowly toward a deeper stillness. When you notice your mind reaching out to check on the future, or when it begins to catalogue all the ways you think you are falling behind, try to simply notice the tightness of that reach. Don't push the thought away. Just acknowledge the sensation of the grip. It is a familiar, weary reflex. You don't have to be angry with it, and you don't have to follow it into the maze of what-ifs. Just acknowledge that the mind is trying to protect you by staying tight. And then, with a slow, deliberate exhale, give yourself permission to release the tension in your jaw, the space between your eyes, and the weight of your hands against the sheets. You are doing the work of being human, and that is a significant, heavy task. It is enough to simply be present with the discomfort for a while, allowing the awareness to act like a soft, moist light on dry ground. You don't have to force the skin to break. You only have to acknowledge that it exists and that it is okay to feel the constriction without believing it is your permanent home. In a moment, we will look at a story of a weaver, someone who also knew the heavy burden of trying to maintain a form that no longer allowed for movement. It is a story about the threads we use to bind ourselves and the strange, quiet courage it takes to unspool them. But for now, just rest in the knowledge that you have arrived exactly where you need to be. The day is behind you, its pressures and its demands now distant like light on a shore you have left far behind. There is no more navigating to do. There is no more defending your territory. There is only the breath, the soft intake, and the slower release, and the permission to let the edges of your day become porous, fading into the dark, quiet sanctuary of the night. You may notice how the room itself seems to invite this change, the way the darkness holds you without asking for anything in return. The walls of your home, the weight of your blankets, the steady, rhythmic hum of the world outside. They all exist without effort, without needing to hold on to who they were yesterday. They are simply unfolding, moment by moment, natural unfolding. You are not a static object that must be preserved. You are a living, breathing, evolving event, and it is safe to let that evolution happen. It is safe to be a little less defined tonight, to be a little more fluid, to let the boundaries of yourself soften into the quiet. If you find yourself worrying that letting go will lead to a loss of who you are, remember that the most beautiful things in nature are those that know how to change. The seasons do not fear the turning of the calendar. The trees do not cling to the autumn leaves. When the time for winter has come, they understand, with a quiet, ancient intelligence, that letting go is not the end of the story, but the necessary precursor to the next, more vibrant chapter. You are not losing yourself by shedding the skin of who you had to be to survive the past. You are making room for the you that is waiting to breathe, the you that is capable of a deeper, more authentic peace. As we move toward the first story, keep your attention tethered to this feeling of loosening. Whenever the mind tries to snap back into its rigid patterns, use the breath as a gentle anchor. There is no need for perfection in this. If you wander, simply come back. The path is always here, waiting, in the space between your thoughts. You are doing well, dear friend. You are exactly where the process of your own healing requires you to be. Simply stay here, in the softness of this moment, and let the rest of the world wait until morning. The shedding of an old skin is a silent, internal work, and it is happening even now, in the quiet, unforced rhythm of your heart. In a high, windswept valley, where the air is often thin and cold, there lived a weaver named Kaelen. His workshop was a narrow room built of rough-hewn stone, clinging to the edge of a precipice that looked down into a churning, slate-coloured river. Kaelen was known throughout the mountain villages for a single, extraordinary achievement. He had spent his entire adult life weaving a ceremonial robe of such intricate, heavy complexity that it required almost all his waking hours to maintain. It was a garment woven from gold-threaded silk and lined with thick, velvet-like wool, designed to be worn for a great festival that never seemed to arrive. Every morning, before the first light touched the peaks, Kaelen would sit at his massive wooden loom. The room would smell of stale dust and the metallic scent of damp mountain air. He would spend hours inspecting every single thread, checking for the slightest fray, the smallest sign of wear, or any hint that the fabric might be losing its luster. If a thread appeared loose, he would spend days meticulously binding it, reinforcing the structure, convinced that, if this robe were to lose its shape, his own purpose in the valley would dissolve along with it. The robe had grown so heavy that it now occupied half the room. It sat there, draped over a wooden frame, a testament to years of focused, exhaustive effort. Yet, despite the beauty of the work, Kaelen was deeply tired. His hands, though skilled, were perpetually stiff, curled into the shapes they held while tightening the knots. His back had taken on the permanent curve of his hunched posture at the loom, and his eyes, strained by the dim light of his constant, obsessive focus, had lost their ability to gaze at the wide, open horizons of the valley. He had become a man trapped by his own craftsmanship, his life defined by the preservation of a heavy, golden burden that he could no longer even wear. One autumn afternoon, when the wind was whistling through the gaps in the stone walls, with a hollow, mournful sound, a traveller arrived at Kaelen's door. This man was not a merchant or a pilgrim, but an old, retired mountain guide named Jiro, who was known for walking the highest trails with nothing but a small cloth sack and a staff of smooth, white birch. Jiro did not knock. He simply stepped inside, letting the door creak open to reveal the swirling, grey mist outside. Kaelen barely looked up from his work. He was busy tying a microscopic knot in a gold thread, his face etched with the familiar anxiety of a man protecting his legacy. Jiro stood in the center of the room, looking at the massive golden robe, then at the hunched, weary figure of the weaver. The old guide walked to the edge of the loom and reached into his sack. He pulled out a small, unassuming object, a simple, weathered ceramic bowl, cracked along one side and mended with a thin, dark line of resin. He set the bowl on a workbench right in front of Kaelen's eyes, interrupting the weaver's view of his threads. Kaelen frowned, his focus breaking. "I am busy," he said, his voice raspy from disuse. "That is an old, broken thing. Why have you brought it here?" Jiro smiled, a slow, quiet expression that seemed to crinkle the skin around his eyes. "This bowl is not broken, Kaelen," the guide said softly. "It has simply lived through a great deal of heat, and the cracks are the places where it chose to yield. If it had stayed rigid, it would have shattered entirely when the fire touched it. Instead, it holds tea just as well as it did the day it was fired. In fact, the tea tastes better when you know the history of the clay." Kaelen looked from the bowl to the massive golden robe on the frame. He felt a sudden, sharp ache in his chest, a feeling of being hollowed out, though he could not say why. "I do not have time for stories of clay," the weaver replied, though he had stopped moving his hands. The silence in the room suddenly grew very heavy, punctuated only by the wind rattling the frame of the window. "You speak as if the robe is keeping you alive," Jiro continued, his voice barely rising above the wind. "But tell me, Kaelen, when was the last time you felt the wind on your own skin? When was the last time you looked at the river and did not see the threads of your robe reflected in the water, but simply the water itself. You are holding onto this gold so tightly that your own fingers are beginning to turn to stone. Kaelen tried to defend his work. If I do not hold it together, it will unravel. If it unravels, who am I? This work is my life. Jiro reached out and gently laid his hand on the heavy golden fabric. It was cold to the touch. It is not your life, the guide said. It is a structure you have mistaken for your soul. You are the one who weaves, not the thing that is woven. And even the most beautiful robe, if kept away from the light and the movement of the seasons, will eventually choke the one who carries it. Kaelen looked down at his own hands, trembling slightly from the tension he had maintained for so many years. He realized, with a shock that felt like falling from a great height, that he had been so busy preventing the robe from fraying that he had allowed himself to fray entirely. He was a shell of a man, a shadow of the person who had once enjoyed the challenge of creation, now reduced to a sentry, guarding a pile of silk. What if you were to open the door? Jiro asked, gesturing toward the swirling grey mist outside. What if you allowed the mountain air to enter this room? What if you let the threads be what they are, subject to time, subject to wear, subject to the natural fading that comes to all things? Would the world end, or would you finally be able to leave this chair? Kaelen felt a terrifying, wonderful impulse. He reached out and touched the golden silk, not to inspect it for flaws, but to feel the fabric itself. It was dense, unyielding, and completely detached from the life he saw unfolding in the valley below. He looked at the cracked ceramic bowl, at the way the resin held the pieces together in a graceful, honest line, and then back to the golden mountain of fabric that felt like a prison. He didn't move yet. The weight of his own identity, the identity of the great weaver of the golden robe, was too heavy to drop in a single heartbeat. But for the first time in 20 years, he did not pick up his needle to tighten a knot. He simply sat, the silence in the room beginning to shift, changing from a state of anxious maintenance to a state of waiting. The bowl sat between them, a quiet, broken, and beautiful witness to the possibility that one could be mended, that one could be whole, without needing to be perfect or unchanging. The wind outside intensified, a sudden gust pushing the door wider, allowing a flurry of cold, damp mountain mist to drift into the workshop. It touched the golden fabric, dampening the silk, and Kaelen did not rush to dry it. He watched as the moisture darkened the threads, noting how the material reacted, how it changed, and how, in that moment, he felt a flicker of something he had not felt in a long time, a sense of curiosity about what lay beyond the walls of his own creation. The story of the weaver is not a call for you to abandon your responsibilities or to walk away from everything you have built in your life. It is, instead, a quiet invitation to examine the weight you are currently carrying. You might ask yourself, what is the golden robe in your own life? What is the structure, the habit, or the identity that you have been protecting with such desperate, exhausting precision? Perhaps it is the need to be seen as strong, the need to have every answer, or the need to keep your own history from unraveling in the eyes of others. You are safe here, dear friend. This room, the dim light, the rhythm of the night. These things do not require you to hold anything together. You can let the threads of your daily worries, your past regrets, and your future rehearsals simply rest for now. You do not need to be the guardian of your own perfection tonight. You can be like the weaver in the moments after the visitor left just sitting in the quiet, watching the light change and wondering with a gentle heart, what might happen if you finally let the knots be? There is a deeper peace that comes from admitting that we are, in some ways, like the cracked bowl. We are not defined by the areas where we have been mended, nor by the places where life has left a mark upon us. We are defined by our capacity to contain, to hold, and to be present. Even after we have been through the fire, the cracks are not flaws. They are simply the evidence of our capacity to keep going. As you continue to listen, try to imagine the golden robe as something separate from you. It is a thing you made, a thing you carried, but it is not the person who is listening to these words right now. The listener is the one who is witnessing the exhaustion. The listener is the one who knows it is time to breathe. And that witness, that deep, quiet capacity for observation, is the part of you that never frays, never fades, and never needs to be maintained. It is the soft, open awareness that has been with you since the beginning, waiting, always, for you to set the burden down and simply be. When you reflect on the weaver Kaelen, his story may not feel like a distant fable, but rather a mirror of your own tired hours. We are often like that weaver, sitting in a room we built for ourselves, surrounded by the heavy, golden threads of our own expectations, our past identities, and our desperate need to keep everything from fraying. We believe that if we simply work harder, if we tighten the knots of our self-discipline, just a little bit more, we will finally be safe. We think the tightness is a sign of our commitment, our strength, or our dedication to those we love. But the weaver shows us that there is a quiet, hidden danger in this way of living. It is not the work itself that exhausts the soul. It is the refusal to let the fabric change as time moves forward. This story is not telling us that we should stop caring about the things we build, nor is it suggesting that we should live without purpose. It is not asking us to become cold, detached, or indifferent to the world. Instead, it is showing us something much quieter and infinitely more liberating. It reveals that the suffering we feel is not just the result of what happens to us in our lives. It is the result of the way our minds try to preserve a version of ourselves that is no longer real, no longer current, or no longer needed. We are constantly trying to patch the holes in the robe of our identity, fearing that if we stop, the wind will blow it away and leave us exposed. In Buddhist wisdom, this is often described as the movement of the mind, trying to turn a river into a stone. Life is by nature fluid, ever-changing, and unrepeatable. Every day brings new experiences, new losses, and new opportunities, but our minds often prefer the comfort of the familiar. We want to be the same person we were yesterday because the past, for all its pain, is at least known. The future, with its vast and unscripted territory, feels like a threat. So we weave our identities out of our past accomplishments, our regrets, and our fears. And we sit at the loom of our own awareness, day after day, trying to keep the pattern consistent. The trouble, as Kaelen discovered, is that the tighter we hold these threads, the more we lose our ability to participate in the actual, living moment. When your hands are cramped from clutching the past, you cannot reach out to touch the present. When your eyes are fixed on the small, frayed edges of your own ego, you cannot see the horizon of the valley. You stop being a participant in your life and become instead a prisoner of your own defense mechanisms. The Buddha pointed towards this truth by observing that our suffering is often doubled. There is the first pain, the natural, inevitable difficulties of life, the loss, the change, the aging, and the uncertainty. These are the aspects of being human that we cannot fully control. But then, there is the second pain, the one we add ourselves. This is the judgment we heap upon our own experiences. It is the way we tell ourselves that we should be doing better, that we should be stronger, that we should not feel this way. It is the narrative we create that says, if I am not this specific person, if I do not maintain this specific role, then I have no value. This second pain is the tightness in your chest. It is the sleeplessness that comes when you are trying to solve your life in the middle of the night. It is the exhaustion of keeping the golden robe perfectly stitched, even when the garment has become a cage. Learning to let go does not mean you abandon your values or walk away from what is true and meaningful to you. It means you stop adding the extra weight of your own resistance to the natural rhythm of your existence. Think of the cracked bowl Jiro brought to the workshop. It did not lose its usefulness because it had been damaged. In fact, its history, the heat it had endured, the fall that caused the crack, gave it a unique, honest character. It was still a vessel for the tea, and it still performed its function, but it no longer needed to be a perfect, unblemished object. When you start to understand this, you might notice that the need to control every outcome in your life begins to soften. You can see your thoughts, the anxieties about tomorrow, the replays of yesterday, not as commands that you must follow, but as events that are passing through your awareness, just as the mountain air entered Kaelen's workshop and touched the fabric without destroying the weaver. The realities of your life can touch you without dismantling your core. You are the space in which these things happen, not the things themselves. You are the weaver, not the robe. This shift in perspective is what we mean when we talk about mindfulness. It is not a state of blissful, empty perfection where you no longer feel anything. It is the ability to stand in the center of your own experience, even when it is uncomfortable, and realize that you are not the tightness in your chest. You are the consciousness that notices the tightness. By simply acknowledging that you are holding on, you create a tiny, essential space between yourself and your struggle. In that space, there is relief. In that space, there is a possibility for something new to emerge. Many of us go through our days carrying the invisible weight of a past version of ourselves, acting out scripts that were written years ago, trying to please people who are no longer in our lives, or trying to achieve goals that have lost their luster. We are exhausted, yet we are afraid to stop because we believe that the moment we stop maintaining the image, we will vanish. But what if vanishing is actually the beginning of being real? What if the vulnerability you fear is actually the only way to feel the actual living reality of your own pulse, your own breath, and your own capacity for joy? You have been doing a very hard thing, dear friend. You have been trying to live in a way that requires constant effort just to stay the same. It is no wonder you are tired. Your heart is not meant to be a loom that never stops clicking. It is meant to be a landscape that changes with the seasons. It is meant to feel the warmth of the sun and the cold of the rain, to grow, to shed, and to renew itself over and over again. When you stop fighting the reality of your own evolution, you discover that you are much more resilient than you ever imagined. You do not need to be made of gold to be precious. You do not need to be seamless to be whole. Take a moment now to breathe into this realization. You don't have to change your entire life overnight. You don't have to throw away all your threads. You only have to start noticing where the grip is tightest. Is it in your expectations of what you should be? Is it in your fear of being seen as unfinished? Is it in the way you treat your own pain as an enemy? Whatever it is, simply acknowledge it. You are safe enough to look at it, and in that looking, you are already beginning to unspool the knots. There is a natural intelligence in you that knows exactly how to heal, just as a tree knows how to shed its leaves in the winter, without fearing that it will never bloom again. You have this same wisdom within you. You are part of this world, not a separate entity trying to protect itself from it. And the more you can lean into that sense of belonging, the more you can trust that it is okay to be exactly where you are, in whatever state of repair or growth you might find yourself. The more the tightness will begin to fade. This is the path toward the inner peace you have been seeking. It is not a place you arrive at by finishing the work. It is the quality of attention you bring to the work itself. When you can watch your own mind, witness your own struggles, and hold them with the same gentle curiosity Jiro held for the weaver, then the struggle stops being a war and starts being a process. You are learning that you can be mended, that you can be real, and that you can be at peace, even while you are still becoming who you are meant to be. The night is quiet, and this space of gentle observation is entirely yours, held by the same rhythm that moves the stars and the tides. You are allowed to rest, and you are allowed to simply be. Now let us bring this insight closer, moving from the story of the weaver into the quiet workshop of your own mind. You do not need to sit in any specific posture for this, nor do you need to cultivate a special state of calm. Simply allow your body to settle into the support beneath you, feeling the length of your spine, the weight of your head, and the gentle release of your shoulders as you exhale. There is no performance here. You are not a weaver who must produce a perfect robe. You are only a witness to the unfolding of your own life. If it feels right, begin by bringing your awareness to the breath. Notice the cool air at the nostrils, the subtle expansion of the chest, and the slow, natural contraction that follows. You don't need to change the rhythm. Just observe it. The breath is the most reliable anchor you have, because it is always moving, always changing, and always arriving exactly when it is needed. It is a natural process that does not require your permission or your control. Now, invite your mind to gently wander toward a thought or a pattern that has been consuming your energy lately. Perhaps it is a persistent anxiety about something you have to do tomorrow, a replay of a mistake from the past, or a nagging feeling that you are behind, that you are not enough, or that your life is unspooling in a way you cannot catch. Do not try to solve this thought. Do not try to argue with it, and do not try to silence it. Simply identify the sensation of it. Where do you feel this thought in your body? Perhaps it is a tightening in the stomach, a clenching in the jaw, or a frantic, buzzy energy in the back of your mind. Imagine that you are holding this specific worry in your hands, much like the weaver Kaelen held his gold-threaded silk. Look at it clearly. See how tightly you are gripping it. See how you have been treating this thought as if it were a structure that protects you, a shell that keeps you safe from the unpredictability of the valley outside. Notice the texture of the thought. Is it heavy? Is it sharp? Is it tangled? Take your time. You are not meant to throw it away. You are only meant to acknowledge that you are holding it, and to recognize that the exhaustion you feel comes from the effort of holding, not from the thought itself. As you sit with this image of yourself carrying your own heavy golden robe of worries, imagine that old guide Jiro walking into the room. He does not offer to take the robe from you. He does not offer to fix the threads. or tell you that your struggle is unimportant. He simply brings the broken, mended bowl and places it on your workbench. Look at the bowl. Notice the dark, honest line of the resin that holds the pieces together. That line is not a flaw. It is a testament to the fact that the bowl has survived, that it has been through the heat and returned to be useful once more. In this quiet space, you might practice the art of simply uncurling your fingers. You don't have to drop the robe all at once. Perhaps you can just loosen your grip by a fraction. Maybe you can allow the weight to rest more heavily on the table or the floor, instead of pulling it entirely onto your own shoulders. As you exhale, imagine the tension of the grip melting away. Let the fingers that have been curled for so long relax into the space of the bed. You are allowed to set the burden down for a while. The robe will remain there. The responsibilities will remain. But for now, you are choosing to be the weaver who rests, rather than the weaver who fears the unraveling. Whenever a thought tries to pull you back into the cycle of fixing, tightening, or predicting, notice that urge. See it as a habit, not a necessity. Remind yourself that the mind is trying to be helpful by remaining alert, but that you are currently in a space where alertness is not required. You can tell your mind, in your own quiet way, that it has done enough for today. You can offer yourself the same grace. Jiro offered the weaver the grace of being unfinished, the grace of being mended, and the grace of being human. If you find that your thoughts are circling like the wind through the valley, don't judge the wind. Let the wind move through the room. Let the thoughts arise, take their shape, and then watch them dissipate like mist. You don't have to chase them, and you don't have to build a home for them. Just notice them and return your attention to the bowl on the table. Focus on the way the light touches the surface of the clay. Focus on the way the room feels when you are not actively trying to control the outcome of your life. There is a profound, quiet safety in this act of letting go. By acknowledging that your life is a series of movements rather than a static monument, you give yourself permission to be dynamic, to be flexible, and to be soft. You might notice that when you stop clutching the very thing you feared, the feeling of losing control is replaced by a sense of being supported by the current of your own existence. You are not the robe you are trying to perfect. You are the one who is breathing, the one who is present, and the one who is capable of realizing that, no matter what happens, you are still here. Take another slow, deep breath, and as you do, imagine that the room is filling with a gentle, cool mountain air. Let this air wash over the places where you have felt the most tension: the forehead, the throat, the center of the chest. With every exhale, feel the boundaries of your body becoming less rigid, more like the water of the river that flows past the weaver's workshop. You are not a wall that must resist the current. You are part of the water. You are meant to flow, to move, and to change. There is no rush to conclude this practice. If you find your mind slipping back into its old patterns, simply notice that too. That is just another thread, another knot, another moment of being human. Each time you notice, you are waking up. Each time you return to the breath, you are choosing a different way of relating to your life. You are moving from a state of anxious maintenance to a state of receptive being. You are doing a brave thing by being here, in the dark, with nothing but your own awareness for company. It takes courage to admit that you are tired. It takes wisdom to stop trying to force the fabric of your life to stay exactly as you once imagined it. You are discovering, bit by bit, that the strength you possess is not the ability to hold on, indefinitely, but the capacity to be present with whatever is actually here, in this room, in this breath, and in this quiet, unfolding moment of your own existence. Stay with this sensation of softening. If you feel a wave of emotion, let it pass through you like a cloud. If you feel empty, let that emptiness be a place where you can finally rest. There is nothing left to achieve tonight. The loom can stand silent. The gold threads can wait for another morning. For now, there is only the quiet, the breath, and the gentle, mended wholeness of being exactly who you are, right in the center of your own life. You are not falling apart. You are simply becoming something more fluid, something more capable of holding the truth of your own experience. And that, in itself, is a profound and lasting peace. Many years after the weaver Kaelen first encountered the guide with the mended bowl, he found himself living not in the valley, but in a small, remote monastery, perched upon a ridge where the clouds often touched the stone walls. He was no longer the man who lived for the golden robe. He was a simple monk, responsible for the maintenance of the monastery's inner courtyard, a space dominated by a very old, very gnarled juniper tree. The courtyard was a place of deep silence, but for Kaelen, the silence was often noisy. His mind, trained by decades of obsessive focus and protective maintenance, still struggled. It constantly sought problems to solve, anxieties to address, and patterns to reinforce. He had let go of the golden robe, but he had not yet let go of the weaver's habit of wanting to keep the world under control. One winter, a severe ice storm descended upon the mountain. For 3 days, the world outside the monastery walls was encased in a brittle, crystalline shell. Everything became still, quiet, and dangerous. The juniper tree in the courtyard, burdened by the thick accumulation of ice, began to sag. Kaelen watched from his window, his heart racing with the familiar, frantic urge to intervene. He felt the old compulsion rising in his chest. He had to do something. He had to scrape the ice away. He had to build a support. He had to find a way to stop the branches from breaking. He believed that, if the tree fell, it would be a failure of his care, a sign that he was still incapable of preserving the beauty he was entrusted with. He grabbed a long, wooden pole from the corner of his room and prepared to rush out into the freezing courtyard. He would break the ice. He would save the tree. Just as he reached for the door, he encountered the monastery's abbot, an elderly woman named Hannah, who moved with such slow, deliberate grace that she seemed to be breathing in time with the mountain itself. She was holding a small, unadorned lantern, its flame shielded from the draft by a simple pane of glass. Hannah did not block his path, but she stopped, turning her gaze toward the sagging juniper. She looked at the ice, then at Kaelen's strained, desperate expression, and then back to the tree. She waited, letting the silence grow between them, until Kaelen felt the urgency in his own limbs begin to waver. "The ice is heavy," Hannah said, her voice soft but resonant against the cold, quiet stone. "It is asking the tree to do something very difficult. If you break the ice, the branches will snap back up so quickly. They will shatter. They have become brittle in the cold. They are not ready for the release you want to give them." Kaelen looked at the pole in his hands, then back at the tree. "But it will break," he whispered, his voice thick with the old anxiety. "If I do nothing, I am watching it die." Hannah stepped closer, holding the lantern, so the warm, flickering light illuminated the frozen needles of the tree. "When you hold a thought that something must not happen, you create a fire in your own mind that is far hotter than the cold outside. She said, "The tree is living through its winter. It knows how to yield. It knows how to bend. It does not need you to be its savior. It needs you to be its witness." She reached out and rested her hand on the trunk of the juniper. It was a gesture of quiet connection, not one of control. Kaelen watched her. He saw how she did not pull at the branches, how she did not try to force the ice to fall. She simply stayed there, present with the reality of the storm, present with the struggle of the wood. In that moment, something shifted inside Kaelen. He felt the familiar, frantic need to solve, to protect, and to fix. And he realized, with a clarity that stung like the mountain air, that his urge to save the tree was actually just another way of trying to save himself from the discomfort of uncertainty. He let the wooden pole slide from his grip. It clattered against the stone floor, a sharp, sudden sound in the quiet courtyard. He did not run to catch it. He did not rush to fix the tree. Instead, he stood beside Hannah, watching the ice glisten in the weak, grey light of the dawn. He felt the cold, he felt the fear, and he felt the immense, terrifying weight of simply allowing things to happen as they must. He didn't become a master of Zen. In that moment, he didn't suddenly possess a mind that was free from fear, but for the first time. He did not act on the fear. He did not become the servant of the urgent, anxious thought that demanded he intervene. The tree bent. It groaned under the weight, the ice crackling like distant, thunderous applause. Kaelen winced, his instinct screaming at him to turn away, to go back into his room, to hide, but he stayed. He watched the juniper, he watched the ice, and he watched his own mind. He witnessed the way his ego tried to cast him as the villain for letting the tree suffer, and he witnessed the way his compassion tried to trick him into controlling the natural world. He held these internal storms with the same gentle, open awareness Hannah held for the tree. By the afternoon, the temperature shifted just a fraction. The ice began to soften, not because anyone had broken it, but because the cycle of the day had turned. The branches slowly began to rise, not all at once, but in small, rhythmic motions, shaking off the weight in their own time. They were bent, yes, they were scarred by the pressure, but they were alive. Kaelen turned to Hannah, who was still standing there, the lantern flame burning steady and true. "It survived," he said, his voice barely audible. Hannah nodded. "It survived. Because it was allowed to be exactly where it was," she replied. "And you survived too, Kaelen. You did not have to break the tree to prove that you were present." This moment of transformation was not a sudden transcendence. It was a subtle, profound change in the way Kaelen related to his own internal weather. He realized that the golden robe of his old identity, the identity of the weaver, who must always be in control, was a habit of mind that he could set aside even in the middle of a storm. He learned that he could stand in the presence of his own anxiety, look at it, acknowledge its demand for action, and still choose to remain still, allowing the reality to unfold without his interference. This is the deeper layer of the work we are doing tonight. It is not about becoming a person who no longer feels the urge to control. It is about becoming a person who recognizes that urge and chooses, with gentle consistency, to put it down. You are practicing the same discipline Kaelen found in the courtyard. Every time you notice that you are trying to force your own life to move faster than it is meant to, or trying to prune your experiences to fit a certain predetermined shape, you are being invited to pause, You are being invited to put down the pole, to stand in the cold with your fear, and to witness the life that is happening rather than the life you are trying to manufacture. You have spent so much energy trying to save yourself from the perceived failure of not being in control. You have treated your own vulnerability as an ice-covered branch that must be supported at all costs. But what if the vulnerability is actually the strength? What if the ability to bend, to sag, and to endure the weight of the season is what makes you resilient? You do not have to be an oak that stands unmoving in the storm. You can be a juniper. You can be a willow. You can be someone who knows how to yield, someone who trusts that the warmth will return, and someone who understands that the act of witnessing your own life is enough. As the night deepens, you may find that this realization brings a strange, quiet comfort. You are not responsible for the entire forest. You are not the keeper of every outcome. You are only the one who is breathing, the one who is watching, and the one who is slowly learning to trust the rhythm of the seasons. There is a profound, unshakable dignity in this. It is the dignity of a human being who has stopped fighting the truth of their own experience and has started, instead, to live within it. Think of your own life as the courtyard in the storm. There are moments when the weight is heavy, when the pressure feels as if it might break you, and when the mind screams for a way to make it stop. That is the storm. It is real, it is uncomfortable. But you are the one standing in the center of the courtyard, holding the lantern of your own awareness. You do not need to be the one who clears the ice. You only need to be the one who stays present, who stays kind, and who trusts that the ice, like all things, will eventually yield to the turning of the light. You are safe enough to be this person, tonight and in the days to come. You don't have to be a master of anything. You only have to be a person who is willing to notice when the pole is in your hand, and who is willing, with a gentle, weary sigh, to set it down upon the stone. Each time you do this, you are carving out a little more room for the real you to breathe. Each time you refuse to be the servant of your own anxiety, you are reclaiming a piece of your own freedom. And that freedom, however small, is the foundation upon which everything else is built. As we drift further into the silence, let the image of the courtyard hold you. See the quiet, frozen branches of the tree, the soft glow of the lantern, and the two figures standing still, watching the movement of the winter day. They are not waiting for the storm to end so they can return to a life of control. They are living the storm, honoring the storm, and letting the storm reveal the truth of their own endurance. You are in that courtyard now. The weight of the world is distant, held by the same earth that holds you. You can let the tension in your body go, bit by bit, allowing yourself to bend, to yield, and to settle into the safety of being exactly as you are for now. There is no urgency in the way the moon travels across the sky, and there is no need for you to rush your own process of coming home to yourself. The night is doing its work, and you are free to do nothing at all. The exhaustion you carry is not a byproduct of your failures. It is the natural result of trying to keep the world static, when everything is, by its very nature, in motion. We often mistake our need for control for a form of safety. We believe that if we can just anticipate every outcome, if we can rehearse every conversation, and if we can judge our own mistakes with enough severity, we will finally be protected from the unexpected. But this is the paradox that keeps the mind awake, long after the body has grown weary. The more we tighten our grip on the outcomes of our lives, the more we shrink our capacity to actually experience them. Think of how the mind often treats the past. We replay a difficult moment, not to learn from it, but to try and rewrite it, as if by reliving the pain, we could somehow undo the original event. We imagine that if we scrutinize the past with enough intensity, we will finally find the key that would have allowed us to be different, to be stronger, to be someone else entirely. But the past is a finished garment. It has already been woven. To keep pulling at its threads is not to fix the robe. It is to unravel the person who is wearing it right now. This is where the distinction between the two pains becomes vital. Life will always bring challenges. The first pain. There will be moments of disappointment, transitions that feel like losses, and physical sensations of discomfort. These are part of the landscape of existence. They are like the weather. Sometimes it is cold. Sometimes the storm is fierce. Sometimes the path is steep. But the second pain, the one that keeps you restless at night, is the one you add yourself. It is the story you tell about the challenge. It is the judgment that says, I should not be feeling this, or something is fundamentally wrong with me because I am struggling. When you believe that your pain is a sign of your inadequacy, you turn an event into an identity. You stop being a person who is experiencing a difficult moment and start believing that you are the difficulty. You begin to define your worth by how well you can suppress, fix, or hide your own inner weather, and this is a labor that can never be finished. The mind becomes a sentry, patrolling the borders of your consciousness, looking for anything that might threaten the image of the person you believe you must be. It judges your own sadness as a weakness, your own anxiety as a failure, and your own confusion as a sign that you are losing your way. But what if peace was not found in the absence of these sensations? What if peace was found in the way you relate to them? When we stop adding the second pain, the judgment, the shame, the desperate need to make the storm stop, the first pain, while still present, begins to change its shape. It stops being a siege and starts being a visitor. It stops being a definition of who you are and starts being a piece of information about your current experience. You can feel the sadness without believing that you are a sad person. You can feel the anxiety without believing that you are in actual, immediate danger. The fear of uncertainty is another powerful driver of this second pain. We want the future to be mapped out like a predictable road. We want the reassurance that if we follow a certain path, we will reach a destination where we can finally stop and rest. But life does not offer such maps. It offers only the next step. When we try to bridge the gap between where we are and where we think we need to be, we are essentially trying to live in a future that does not exist. We are spending the energy of our present moment on a projection of a future that may never arrive. Look at how you try to earn your worth through the eyes of others. This is a common, wearying habit. We scan the faces and the reactions of those around us, searching for evidence that we are acceptable, that we are good, or that we are safe. We perform our roles with a heightened sense of vigilance, constantly adjusting our behavior to fit the environment. But this too is a form of resistance to reality. It is a refusal to trust that you are enough just as you are, right in the middle of your own unfolding process. You are not a product to be sold or an image to be curated. You are a living process, and that process deserves the same gentleness you would offer to a child who is learning to walk. The work of mindfulness is not to stop the thoughts, but to stop treating them as commands. When a thought says, "You should have done better," or "You are going to fail," it is not a prediction of reality. It is an echo of a fear. It is a piece of the old, hardened skin that is trying to convince you that you are still vulnerable in the same way you were years ago. You do not have to obey it. You can observe it, nod to it, and let it pass through the room. You can recognize it for what it is, a manifestation of the mind's desire to protect you through control, even when that protection has become a cage. Many of us feel that if we let go of this vigilance, we will lose our edge, or we will stop growing. But the opposite is true. When you stop using your energy to fight your own feelings, you reclaim that energy for your actual life. You find that you are more capable, more resilient, and more present than you ever were. When you were busy policing your own thoughts, you learn that it is possible to hold a feeling without becoming it. You learn that it is possible to experience a difficult emotion and know that it will pass, just as the ice on the juniper tree eventually had to yield to the sun. This is the transition from control to trust. Trust does not mean you know what will happen next. It means you are willing to find out, and you are confident that you will be able to meet it when it arrives. It is the understanding that you do not need to possess the whole future to survive it. You only need to be present for the next breath. And that breath is always enough. It is always sufficient. It is the thread that connects you to the now, the only place where life actually happens. Notice, as you listen to these words, where your body is still holding on. Is there a faint, habitual tension in the muscles of the face, or a guardedness in the breath? This is the physical remnant of the second pain, the somatic echo of the belief that you must always be ready to defend yourself. You can let that go, bit by bit. You can allow the body to sink into the support of the present, knowing that for this moment, you are not under attack. You are not being judged by anyone. You are not failing at being a human being. You are simply in the process of becoming more awake, more real, and more at peace with the reality of your own existence. When the mind creates a crisis out of a simple sensation or a stray thought, remember the weaver and the monk. Remember that the robe was just a thing to be worn, not a soul to be preserved. Remember that the tree was just a part of the mountain, not a monument to be protected from the storm. You are the space in which these things happen, and that space is untarnished by the intensity of the events. It is the clear, open sky that remains after the clouds have moved on. And you have access to that sky whenever you choose to stop adding your own story to the events of your day. If you find yourself feeling lonely, understand that this too is a part of the landscape. It is not a sign that you are fundamentally broken. It is the feeling of coming back to yourself, of realizing that your own company is the only company you will ever truly have. When you learn to sit with your own loneliness, it stops being a hollow ache and becomes a threshold. It becomes the place where you can finally meet your own heart, not as a project to be fixed, but as a presence to be honored. There is a deep, quiet power in saying, I am here, and this is what is happening, and it is okay that it is happening. You don't have to like the difficulty. You don't have to agree with the pain. You only have to stop warring with it. When you drop the shield of your resistance, you discover that you are much larger than the thing you are fighting. You discover that you are the vast, compassionate witness of your own life, capable of holding whatever arises with a gentle, steady hand. This is the truth that the night brings, the clarity that the darkness protects, and the peace that has been waiting for you all along. in the space between the thoughts. The practice of unspooling. The golden robe is not something you only do on a meditation cushion or in the quietude of a retreat. It is a work of the living, breathing, noisy afternoon. It is found in the moments when you are checking your phone for a reply that hasn't come, your heart racing with a quiet, persistent anxiety. In that moment, you are trying to weave a future where you are approved of, where you are safe, where the uncertainty of the connection is finally resolved. You are tightening your fingers around a thread that you do not control. When you notice that tightening, the way you hold your breath while waiting, the way your mind creates 100 stories about why someone hasn't reached out, that is the moment to remember the juniper tree in the ice storm. You do not have to break the ice. You do not have to force a resolution. You only have to notice the pole in your hand. You only have to acknowledge that you are trying to manage an outcome that is currently out of your reach. By simply breathing, by letting the weight of that anxiety rest in your belly instead of your chest, you are choosing to be the witness rather than the fixer. You are choosing to be present with the discomfort, and in that choice, the panic loses its power to command you. Consider the times you lie awake at night, the silence of your room acting like a magnifying glass for your regrets. You replay a conversation from 3 years ago, or you pick at a decision you made yesterday, trying to patch the holes in your own history. Your mind is sitting at the loom, trying to reweave a garment that has already been worn, but you are not the weaver of the past. You are the one experiencing the present. When the mind begins this circular motion, treat it with the same gentle patience you would offer a tired child who cannot settle you. Don't have to follow the thought into the maze. You don't have to agree with the judgment. You can simply notice the habit, like an old familiar song playing in the background, and then shift your attention back to the coolness of your pillow or the steady rhythm of the dark. Peace is practiced in these small, unglamorous moments. It is practiced when you feel the urge to compare your progress to someone else's, that subtle, stinging feeling that you are behind, or that you are somehow missing the point of your own life. When that thought arises, realize that it is just another golden thread of the old robe, a remnant of a version of yourself that thought worth had to be earned by achievement. You are not a project that needs constant validation. You are not a sculpture that must be polished to a perfect sheen for an audience. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to be in the middle of your own process. Think of the energy you spend pretending to be okay when you are feeling heavy. That exhaustion of performing for the world, while your inner temple feels like it is falling into disrepair. You do not have to be a seamless, golden monument for anyone. It is a form of profound wisdom to admit, even if only to yourself. When you are struggling, you can be honest with your own heart. You can say, I am tired, and that is okay. I am uncertain, and that is allowed. This admission is not a failure. It is the first step toward the shedding of the old dry skin. It is the act of turning the lantern inward and seeing what is actually there, without the need for an audience or a reward. When you feel guilty for resting, when you believe that your value is tied to your productivity, try to pause and feel the weight of your own body against the mattress. The earth does not ask the trees to work in the winter. The rivers do not apologize for slowing down when the drought comes. Why do you believe that you are the only thing in the universe that is not allowed to be still? You have been running for so long that stopping feels like a threat. But the truth is that your capacity for rest is a sign of your trust in the world. When you can rest without guilt, you are signaling to your entire nervous system that you are safe, that you are held, and that you do not need to be the sole architect of your own survival. There is a form of grace in a single conscious breath before you answer an email, before you react to a criticism, or before you make a decision that feels heavy with consequence. That breath is not a waste of time. It is a way of reclaiming your agency. It is a moment of choosing to live from your own center rather than reacting to the demands of the world. It is the act of stepping back from the loom and realizing that the robe is not your identity. You are the one who is witnessing the pattern. And because you are the witness, you are free to change the design at any time. Do not be afraid of the feeling that you are not enough. This is a ghost, a remnant of a story you were told by a world that values accumulation over being. You are not a collection of achievements. You are a collection of experiences, of sunsets you have watched, of tears you have shed, of breaths you have taken, and of the quiet, persistent awareness that links them all together. You are the container for all of this, and the container does not have to be perfect to be sacred. The container does not have to be uncracked to hold the light. When you find yourself wanting to control a relationship, trying to prune the other person to fit the shape you think they should inhabit, remember the gardener who let the willow be. Compassion is the ability to see someone else as they are, without the need for them to be your mirror, your savior, or your proof of worth. When you stop trying to control, you start being able to connect. You create space for the other person to breathe, and in that space, you find a connection that is far more durable, far more honest, and far more peaceful than any you could have manufactured through force. Every time you choose to stop adding the second pain, the judgment, the shame, the internal war, you are practicing the core of Buddhist wisdom. You are practicing the understanding that difficulty is not the enemy. You are practicing the understanding that you can meet your life as it is, with all its messiness, all its uncertainty, and all its beauty, without needing to turn it into a struggle. You are becoming a person who can hold the weight without being crushed by it, who can stand in the storm without needing to be the one who stops the wind. As you lean into this new way of being, you might notice that the world doesn't become magically easier, but you become significantly steadier. The challenges still arrive, but they no longer feel like personal attacks. The uncertainties remain, but they no longer feel like threats to your existence. You are learning that you are the space in which these things happen, and that space is wide, open, and fundamentally at peace. You are not the golden robe. You are the one who has decided, finally, that it is safe to be bare, to be vulnerable, and to be real. And in that, you are already home. You are already exactly the person you were meant to be, right in the middle of your own wonderfully unfolding life. Notice the physical sensation of this shift as you settle deeper into the night. Your hands are open, your jaw is loose, and the weight of your body is finally, truly being shared with the bed. The urge to solve your life has faded, leaving behind a stillness that feels like a blanket, warm and familiar. You don't have to hold the threads anymore. The loom is silent. The workshop is dark, and the river outside is flowing exactly as it should, without any effort from you at all. You can let the day fade entirely now, letting the memories of what you did or what you didn't do dissolve into the quiet dark sanctuary of your own being. You are safe, you are held, and you are allowed to simply exist in the soft, beautiful, unscripted middle of the night. The weight of the golden threads you have been carrying is already slipping from your shoulders. It is not because you are weak, but because you have finally realized that you do not need to be the weaver of a robe that was never meant for your spirit. Feel how the fabric of your own life, the real, breathing, changing fabric, is becoming lighter, softer, and more spacious. The room is quiet, and the night is folding around you like the soft, cool mist of the mountain ridge where the juniper tree stands. There is no longer any need to keep the loom clicking in the dark. There is no longer any need to inspect every thread for flaws, to fear the unraveling, or to worry about the shape you are presenting to the world. Let the golden threads of your expectations drift into the silence of the room. See them, becoming dim, then transparent, then simply part of the shadows that hold no judgment. You have spent so long sitting in that workshop of the mind, trying to make everything perfect, trying to hold the past and the future, together with knots of anxiety. But the workshop is quiet now. The tools have been set down upon the stone. The heavy, gold-threaded silk is being reclaimed by the earth, by the night, by the simple, ancient rhythm of existence that knows exactly how to heal what has been held too tightly. Your body is heavy, sinking deeper into the support beneath you, as if the mattress were made of moss and memory. The muscles in your legs are letting go, the tension in your lower back dissolving into the dark, and the rhythm of your heart is slowing, matching the slow, steady pulse of the night. You are not a structure that must be maintained. You are the space in which the evening unfolds. You are the breath that moves through the dark, unformed and entirely free. Notice how the air moves in your lungs, not as a command, not as a performance, but as a gift that you receive without effort. You do not need to pull the air in. It arrives, it sustains, it departs. You can trust this rhythm. It is the same rhythm that guided the juniper through the winter storm, the same rhythm that guided the weaver to finally open the door and let the mist touch his skin. You are part of this natural cycle of yielding, of shedding, and of finding safety in the very place where you once feared you would be broken. The cracks you have felt in your own life, the places where you were stretched thin, the moments where you felt your identity failing, are not markers of defeat. They are the honest, mended seams of your own humanity. They are the places where the light enters, where the softness remains, and where you have learned, in the quietest way possible, how to keep going. You do not need to be seamless. You do not need to be unblemished. You only need to be real. And tonight, in the safety of this stillness, you are real. You are entirely, beautifully unscripted. There is a deep, resonant peace in knowing that you have finished your work for the day. The golden robe is gone, and the loom is still. You are no longer responsible for managing the universe, for correcting your past, or for blueprinting the entirety of your future. You can leave those things to the turning of the stars and the slow, inevitable unfolding of the dawn. The sun will rise in its own time, and it will find you exactly as you are, refreshed, unburdened, and ready to exist in a way that feels true. Everything that needed to be said has been heard. Everything that needed to be held has been placed into the vast, open space of the night. You are not losing yourself by letting go. You are finally finding the part of you that does not need to be defined by what you do, what you achieve, or what you preserve. You are the witness. You are the weaver who has stepped away from the loom to walk out into the valley, to feel the wind, and to finally see the river. Your mind is slowing, the thoughts becoming like distant echoes, then like ripples on a still lake, then finally like the silence itself. There is nothing to solve. There is nothing to prepare for. There is only the feeling of the breath, the gentle weight of your own existence, and the profound, healing realization that you are held by a grace that does not require you to be anything other than human. Let the darkness be a soft, protective blanket. Let the silence be a place where you can finally stop holding your breath. You have traveled a long way to arrive at this moment of release, and now you have reached the edge of the woods, where the air is sweet with the scent of damp earth and the promise of a long, deep sleep. The juniper branches are still, their needles holding the quiet of the winter, waiting for the gentle light that will eventually return. Your own heart is quiet, holding the stillness of the night, waiting for the morning to breathe into you again. You are safe. You are enough. You are exactly where the cycle of your life has brought you. And that is a place of profound, quiet sanctuary. As the last traces of the day dissolve, feel the edges of your self-identity softening, blurring, becoming one with the dark. You are not a name or a role or a history of knots and threads. You are the open, empty, and infinite space that remains when everything else has been set down. And if the peace you have been searching for was never a prize to be won at the end of a long, exhausting journey, but the very silence that allowed you to open the door, step into the mist, and finally, for the first time, in a long time, simply breathe. Would you be willing, tonight, to stop holding the handle of that door and just let it swing wide to the night?